There's a secret that people in spiritual circles rarely talk about openly. Not because it's forbidden, but because if you share it too soon, it sounds like nihilism. It sounds like giving up. Sounds like the worst possible news you could receive. But here's the thing. It might actually be the best news you've ever heard, disguised as a tragedy. The secret is this: the day nothing brings you joy anymore is not the day you broke, it's the day you began to wake up. And the reason nobody tells you this is because most people never get there. They keep finding new things to chase, new distractions to latch onto, new forms of entertainment to keep the machinery of desire grinding forward. They die still believing the next thing will finally do it, the next relationship, the next accomplishment, the next experience. But something different happened to you. The machinery stopped. And now you're standing in the ruins of everything that used to work, wondering if you're dying or going insane. Alan Watts once said something that haunted me for years. He said that the reason we suffer is not because life is terrible, but because we're trying to hold on to experiences that are by nature supposed to flow through us. We're trying to freeze the river. And joy, the kind you used to feel, was never meant to stay, it was meant to visit. The tragedy isn't that it stopped coming. The tragedy is that you spent your whole life building a house for a guest who never intended to move in. But here's what shifts everything. What if the absence you're feeling isn't emptiness? What if it's space? What if the silence where the music used to play isn't death, but the intermission before an entirely different kind of concert begins? Think about this for a moment. When did you first notice that things stopped landing the way they used to? Was it gradual? Or was there a moment when you looked at something that once moved you and felt absolutely nothing? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know where you are in this. And if you're someone who refuses to accept the surface level explanations for why you feel the way you feel, if you want to actually understand what's happening beneath the obvious, subscribe to this channel. We go where most people are too afraid to look, because the truth isn't always comfortable, but it's always worth finding. Now, let me tell you why everything you've been taught about joy is fundamentally upside down. From the moment you were born, you were enrolled in a curriculum you never signed up for. Call it the Happiness Project. The rules are simple. Find things that feel good, avoid things that feel bad, and keep doing this until you die. Every advertisement, every fairy tale, every well-meaning piece of advice you've ever received has reinforced this program. Be happy. Pursue happiness. You deserve to be happy. Happiness is the goal. But here's what nobody mentions. Entire game is rigged. Not against you specifically, but against anyone who plays it long enough with enough intelligence to notice the pattern. The pattern goes like this. You want something, you get it. There's a burst of pleasure, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes subtle. And then, without fail, every single time, that pleasure fades. Not gradually reduces, in fact, transforms into its opposite. Thing you wanted becomes ordinary. The excitement becomes obligation. The novelty becomes routine. And so you need something else, something new, something more. This isn't a flaw in the system. This is the system working exactly as designed. Your nervous system is wired for adaptation. It's supposed to habituate. A stimulus that produced intense response yesterday will produce less response today, and even less tomorrow. This is called hedonic adaptation. And it's the reason millionaires feel just as incomplete as anyone else. It's the reason the view from the penthouse becomes just a view. It's the reason the love of your life becomes just a person who leaves socks on the floor. You've probably noticed this pattern playing out across your entire life. Think about it. How many things have you chased, acquired, and then watched fade? How many times have you climbed the mountain, planted the flag, looked around and felt that sinking recognition? This isn't it either. It's like running on a treadmill that's been cleverly designed to look like a road. You're sweating, exhausting yourself, convinced you're getting somewhere. But the scenery never actually changes. The destination never arrives, because there is no destination. There's only the running. Most people spend their entire lives on this machine. And as long as the pleasure bursts keep coming at somewhat regular intervals, they don't question it. But something happened to you. The bursts stopped coming. Or they come, but they're hollow. They don't land. It's like biting into fruit and tasting nothing. And now you're terrified. Because the one thing you were told would make life worth living Joy, pleasure, happiness has abandoned you. You're still alive, but you can't feel the aliveness. You're still experiencing, but the experiences have gone gray. But here's where it gets fascinating. What I'm about to share will completely shift how you understand this. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus was a man I encountered during a workshop in California. Late 40s, deeply successful by every external measure. He'd built 2 companies, sold one, was running the other. Beautiful family, house in the hills, the kind of life that makes other people jealous when they see fragments of it on social media. Marcus came to the workshop because he couldn't feel anything anymore. That was how he put it. I can't feel anything anymore. I look at my kids and I know I love them, but I don't feel the love. I go to restaurants that I used to dream about being able to afford, and the food is just food. I achieved every goal I set, and it's like eating cardboard. He thought he was depressed. His doctor agreed. He was offered medications, which he tried. They made him feel worse, not better, flattened him even more, so he stopped taking them and started searching for another explanation. What fascinated me about Marcus was the precision with which he could identify the moment things changed. He said, I was sitting in my office, closing a deal worth more than I'd made in the first 30 years of my life combined. And I felt absolutely nothing. I should have been celebrating. I should have been elated. Instead, I just thought, so what? And I've never been able to shake that question since. Everything I do now, some part of my mind asks, so what? I asked Marcus what he thought the so what was really asking. He got quiet for a long time. Then he said something that stayed with me. I think it's asking me why I'm bothering, why I'm still playing this game. And I don't have an answer. What Marcus was experiencing was not depression in the clinical sense. His brain chemistry was fine. His life circumstances were more than fine. What Marcus was experiencing was the collapse of meaning, the game he'd been playing his entire life. The game of acquiring, achieving, and accumulating experiences had suddenly become transparent. He could see through it. And once you see through a game, you can't take it seriously anymore. Is exactly what the existentialists were pointing at. Camus called it the absurd. Sartre called it nausea. But Jung had a different name for it, one that I find much more useful. He called it the confrontation with the shadow. Not the shadow as evil, but the shadow as everything you've refused to see about yourself and your situation. Marcus had spent his entire adult life in motion precisely because he couldn't tolerate stillness. The achievements weren't goals, they were escapes. Every deal, every conquest, every acquisition was a way of outrunning something he didn't want to face. And now, finally, he'd run out of road. There was nowhere left to go, and the thing he'd been running from had finally caught up. And here's what Marcus discovered that most people never see. What he'd been running from wasn't a thing at all. It wasn't a trauma or a fear or a specific problem. It was emptiness itself. It was the void at the center of his constructed self. All those achievements were like furniture arranged around a room with no floor. They looked impressive until you tried to walk on them. Have you ever had a moment like this, where something you believed your whole life suddenly collapsed? Where the story you were living in became visible as just a story? Tell me about it in the comments. I read every one of them. Brings us to what Watts and Jung understood about the nature of joy, something that changes everything once you really grasp it. There are 2 fundamentally different kinds of experience that we've been using the same word for. We call them both joy, but they're not the same thing at all. It's like calling a candle and the sun by the same name, just because they both produce light. The first kind, the kind you've lost, is what we might call ego joy. This is pleasure filtered through the sense of being a separate self who is having the experience. I'm enjoying this. I got what I wanted. This is happening to me and it feels good. Ego joy is transactional. It requires objects. Something has to be acquired, achieved, or experienced for the joy to occur. Remove the object and the joy disappears. Ego joy is also comparative. It only feels like joy in contrast to its absence. The food tastes wonderful because you were hungry. The relationship feels amazing because you were lonely. The success feels triumphant because you remember failure. Without the contrast, the flavor vanishes. This is why rich people aren't happier than middle-class people after the novelty wears off. Once the contrast fades, so does the joy. The second kind of experience, the kind you haven't discovered yet but are being prepared for, is what we might call ground joy or being joy.
It's just not pleasure filtered through the ego.
This is the simple fact of existence experiencing itself. It doesn't require objects. It doesn't depend on contrast. It doesn't come and go based on circumstances. It's more like the electricity that powers the lamp rather than the lamp's flickering light. Watts used to say something that baffled his audiences until it suddenly didn't. He'd say, "You are not something that came into this world. You are something that came out of it, like a wave from the ocean. And just as the wave is the ocean waving, you are the universe peopling. The joy you're looking for isn't something you can get, it's something you already are." Now, what I'm about to explain next is where most people's minds get completely blown. Is the part that changes everything. Stay with me here. The reason nothing brings you joy anymore is not because joy has abandoned you. It's because you've been looking for joy in the wrong place and you've finally exhausted all the wrong places. You've been trying to squeeze joy out of experiences, out of accomplishments, out of relationships, like trying to squeeze blood from a stone. It was never in the stone. It was never in the experiences. The joy you felt wasn't coming from those things. It was coming through those things, from a source that has nothing to do with external circumstances. And here's the disturbing part. The reason those things seemed to provide joy was not because they contained it. It was because momentarily they interrupted your constant mental activity long enough for your natural state to shine through. When you bit into that incredible meal for just a moment, your mind stopped its endless commentary. When you fell in love for just a moment, you stopped being preoccupied with yourself. When you achieved that goal for just a moment, the wanting mind went quiet, and in those gaps, something was revealed that was always there, like the sun coming out from behind clouds. You thought the clouds produced the sun, but the clouds were just temporarily parting. What's happened now is that the clouds have become too thick, too constant, too habituated. The old methods no longer part them. The food doesn't shut up the mind. The achievements don't silence the wanting. The experiences don't interrupt the noise. So the sun seems to have disappeared, but it hasn't. It's exactly where it always was. The clouds are just no longer yielding to the old techniques. This is why Jung called this period the Negredo, the blackening. It's a term from alchemy, and Jung took it very seriously as a psychological reality. Before gold can be produced, the base material must be burned, blackened, reduced to ash. The old form must completely die. Not mostly die, completely die. The Negredo is the experience of that death. It feels like death because it is death. But it's not the death of you. It's the death of how you thought you were. It's the death of the ego structure that was seeking joy in all the wrong places. And here's the thing that scared Jung. The thing he rarely said outright but implied throughout his work. You cannot skip this stage. You cannot go around it, over it, or under it. You can only go through it. And the more you resist it, the longer it lasts. Think about what this actually means. You're suffering right now. This gray experience where nothing lands, this feeling of being a ghost watching your own life, this is not a mistake. This is the work happening. This is the alchemical fire burning away what was never real in the first place. The ego joy you lost was never sustainable anyway. It was built on comparison and contrast and constant craving. It was exhausting you. You just didn't know it because you'd never known anything else. Let me tell you about Elena to show you what this looks like from the other side. Elena was an artist, painter, quite successful by art world standards, gallery shows, collectors, recognition. And she painted because she had to, because there was something inside her that needed to come out. Because when she was creating, she felt most alive. And then, somewhere in her late 30s, the need disappeared. She would stand in front of canvases and feel nothing. No urge, no vision, no spark, just blankness. She called it her creative death. She thought her gift had abandoned her, that she'd used it up, that whatever magic had fueled her work had simply run out. For 3 years, she didn't paint. She tried. She would set up her materials, mix her colors, and stare. Nothing came. She described it as standing at the edge of a well that used to be full, looking down and seeing only darkness. No reflection, no water, just the bottomless dark. And then something happened. She was describing this to me during a conversation. And she said something I'll never forget. She said, "I think I was painting to prove that I existed. Every canvas was me screaming, 'I'm here, I matter, look at me.' And when that need stopped, the painting stopped. Because I wasn't painting. I was performing. I was using the art to escape myself. What emerged on the other side of Elena's 3-year darkness was a completely different relationship with creating. She started painting again, but differently. She said it was like the painting was now happening through her, rather than by her. There was no more desperate need to prove anything. There was just the act itself. And the joy, if you could call it that, was not in the recognition or the completion or the achievement. It was in the doing, in the being with the paint, in the silence of the studio where she wasn't separate from what she was creating. I asked her if she was happier now. She laughed. She said, "I don't know if happier is the word. I'm more at peace. But it's not the peace of getting what you want. It's the peace of not needing things to be different than they are. I don't know if I'll ever have that excited joy again, that feeling of the world opening up with possibilities. But honestly, I don't miss it. It was exhausting. This is better. This is sustainable. This is real." Curious, as you're hearing this, what's shifting your understanding? What's clicking? Tell me in the comments. I really do read everyone. But what does this mean for you practically? How do you live with this grayness while the transformation is occurring? The first thing to understand is that you cannot force this process. You cannot make the dawn come faster by wishing for it. You cannot accelerate the alchemical fire by being impatient with it. Any attempt to manufacture joy, to whip up excitement, to find the next thing that might work is actually a step backward. It's the ego trying to reassert control, trying to return to the old game. What you can do is stop fighting. Stop treating this state as a problem to be solved. It's not a problem. It's a passage. The difference matters. Problems require solutions. Passages require patience. In practical terms, this means you continue to live your life, but you hold your expectations differently. You brush your teeth. You go to work. You have conversations. But you're not demanding that these activities fill you with meaning. You're simply allowing them to be what they are, acts of maintenance, ways of participating in the human world, not sources of salvation. There's an old Zen teaching about this. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities don't change. Your relationship to them changes. You're no longer doing them to get somewhere. You're doing them because they're what's here to be done. And you might notice something surprising if you pay attention. When you stop demanding that experiences deliver joy, when you release that grasping, the experiences themselves become oddly tolerable, even quietly interesting, not in the exciting, pulse-quickening way of before, but in a subtler way, like noticing the weight of your own body in a chair, like feeling the temperature of the air on your skin, like watching thoughts arise and dissolve without needing to act on them. This is not numbness, though it might feel like it at first. It's attention without agenda, presence without purpose. It's actually the foundation upon which something entirely new can be built. If this is opening new doors in your mind, take a moment to subscribe. A community here of people who are done with surface-level explanations, people who want to understand what's actually happening in their experience. Your presence matters, but here's what most people miss. Here's the layer beneath everything I've said so far. The reason nothing brings you joy anymore might be because there is no you to bring joy to, not in the way you've always assumed. This is the insight that Watts spent his entire career circling around, and that Jung approached from a different angle with his concept of the self versus the ego. The separate self, the you that has experiences, the you that used to enjoy things and now doesn't. This self is not what you think it is. It's not a thing. It's a process. It's a pattern of thoughts and sensations that are constantly arising and dissolving, creating the illusion of a continuous experiencer. And the joy you used to feel was, in a sense, this self being temporarily reinforced. When you got what you wanted, the self felt real. When you were praised, the self felt solid. When you achieved something, the self felt justified. The joy was actually the ego's pleasure at its own confirmation. I exist, I matter, I am here. But here's the secret that changes everything. That self was never stable. It was always being propped up by external validation, by achievement, by experience. And when those props are removed, when the joy stops coming, the self starts to become transparent. You start to see through it. And that's terrifying, because if there's no self, who is experiencing this? If there's no you, who are you? This is what Watts meant when he talked about the taboo against knowing who you really are. Not the small you, the biographical you, the you with a name and a history and preferences. The real you, the you that is not separate from anything. The you that is, as he put it, the universe playing hide and seek with itself. When the ego self stops receiving its regular doses of joy, something else becomes visible. Call it awareness. Call it presence. Call it what the mystics have called it for millennia, the ground of being. It's what's looking through your eyes right now. It's what's aware of these words. It's what's aware of the grayness, the flatness, the absence of joy, and it is completely untouched by any of it. This awareness that you are is not joyful or joyless. It's prior to both. It's the screen on which both joy and despair are projected, and it's always been here. Every moment of every experience you've ever had, it was here, watching. You just never noticed it because you were too busy being distracted by the projections on the screen. And there's one more piece to this that might be the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. What happens when you really get this? Stay with me. What happens is not that you become perpetually blissful. That's another ego fantasy, another carrot on another stick. What happens is that your relationship to all experience fundamentally transforms. Joy, when it comes, is welcomed. Sorrow, when it comes, is welcomed. Flatness, when it comes, is welcomed. Because none of it touches what you actually are. You are the welcoming itself. You are the space in which all of it appears and disappears. And paradoxically, when you stopped demanding that life be joyful, when you release that desperate grip, joy has a way of sneaking back in. Not the old joy that depended on getting what you wanted. A different joy. A joy that has no opposite. A joy that's more like gratitude for the sheer fact of existing. A joy that doesn't need anything to be different than it is. But here's what you need to understand if you're walking this path. There is a price. There is always a price for waking up. You will lose the ability to participate in certain illusions. The games that other people play, the games of status and acquisition and comparison, will become transparent to you. You'll see the machinery operating. You'll watch people chasing what you know doesn't satisfy, and you won't be able to tell them. Not because it's secret, but because they won't hear you. They're not ready. Some of your relationships will change. People who related to you as a fellow player in the game of seeking will feel uncomfortable around you. Your lack of desperation will disturb them. Your unwillingness to pretend will feel like judgment, even when it's not. And some days, you'll miss the old intensity. You'll miss the highs, even though you know they always came with lows. You'll miss the drama, even though you know it was exhausting. There's a kind of nostalgia for the fever dream, even after you've woken up. This is normal. This is part of it. But what you gain is something that cannot be taken away by any circumstance. A peace that doesn't depend on anything external. A freedom that no one can give you and no one can remove. A clarity that allows you to navigate the chaos of human life without being destroyed by it. You become like a deep-sea diver who can go into the turbulent waves and return to stillness. The waves haven't stopped. You've just found something beneath them that they cannot reach. Watts called this the cosmic chuckle. He said that when you finally get the joke, when you finally see what's been true all along, you laugh. Not because it's funny in the ordinary sense, but because it's so obvious, so absurdly simple. You've been looking everywhere for what was never missing. You've been trying to become what you already were. And the punchline is that there was never anyone who could fail at this, because there was never anyone separate from what you were seeking. Now, I know your mind might be resisting this. That's okay. The mind's job is to resist anything that threatens the ego structure. This message is threatening. It implies that everything the ego has been doing, all its striving and seeking and avoiding, has been fundamentally misguided. Not wrong, exactly, just unnecessary. The ego doesn't like hearing that. It feels like being told your entire career was pointless. But here's what I want you to notice. You're still here. Despite the resistance, something in you is still listening. Something in you recognizes that there's truth in this, even if another part of you wants to dismiss it. That something, that recognition, that is not the ego. That's the deeper you that already knows. It's just remembering. And Jung said something profound about this. He said that the resistance is itself part of the process. The ego doesn't go quietly. It fights back. It generates counter-arguments and distractions and new things to chase. But if you stay with it, if you allow the resistance without acting on it, eventually the ego exhausts itself. It runs out of moves. And in that exhaustion, something else becomes possible. So when we put this all together, here's what's really happening when nothing brings you joy anymore. Your old operating system is shutting down. The software that ran on desire and acquisition and comparison has crashed. It's not that you're broken. It's that you've outgrown a mode of being that was never designed to last forever. It was training wheels, scaffolding, a stage of development that you were supposed to pass through, not live in permanently. And now you're in the gap between systems. The old one has stopped, but the new one hasn't fully come online yet. This gap feels terrible because there's nothing to hold on to. No reliable source of good feelings. No familiar way of navigating. You're learning to walk again. And the crawling you used to do seems so much easier. But the crawling was never going to get you where you're going. You were going to have to stand up eventually. And standing up means falling down first. Many times. It means the terrifying vulnerability of not knowing how to do what used to come naturally. It means trusting that the new capacity is developing even when you can't see evidence of it. This is what it all comes down to. The joy that you lost was not lost. It was traded. You traded the small joy that came and went, that required constant maintenance, that exhausted you with its demands, for the possibility of something larger, something that doesn't require maintenance because it's always been here, something that doesn't come and go because it was never separate from you. You are not experiencing the absence of joy. You are experiencing the absence of the distraction that kept you from seeing what joy really is. What joy really is not an experience you have. It's what you are when you stop trying to be something else. If your mind is buzzing right now, if something has shifted in how you see things, hit subscribe. Every new subscriber helps this wisdom reach more people who are ready for it. And there are more people ready than you might think. So here's the question I'll leave you with, the question that all of this points toward. What if you don't need to feel joyful to be complete? What if completeness is not a feeling at all? What if the search for joy was always a distraction from recognizing that you were never incomplete to begin with? The reason nothing brings you joy anymore might be the greatest gift you've ever received. It's life's way of forcing you to look in the right direction, inward, toward the source, toward what was never missing, only overlooked. Marcus eventually stopped trying to restart the old game. He sold his company, simplified his life, and spent 2 years doing almost nothing. He said those 2 years were the richest of his life. Not because they were pleasant, necessarily, but because for the first time he wasn't running. He was here, really here. And being here, he discovered, was always what he was looking for. Elena still paints, but now she says the painting is a form of prayer. Not asking for anything, just being with what is. And the grayness she experienced for 3 years, she now calls it the necessary winter, the season when everything went underground so that new life could eventually emerge. After everything we've explored today, I want to know, what's one thing you're going to see differently now? What insight will you carry with you? Tell me in the comments below. If this has touched something real in you, if these ideas have opened doors you didn't know existed, subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and ring that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's in that gray place, thinking they're broken, not realizing they're being rebuilt. There's more here for you, more explorations of the territories that most people are too afraid to enter. Until next time, remember this. You are not a person who lost their joy. You are the awareness that was watching when joy came, watching when joy left, and watching now in the silence between. That awareness has never been touched by any of it. And that awareness, if you want to use the word, is joy itself. Not the joy you lost, the joy you've always been. Stay curious, stay awake, and I'll see you in the next one.